Yeah, hi Bernard, how are you?
Hi, Carsten. How are you? Good, thank you.
So this is the introduction preparation video of our series. But first we should introduce ourselves, or not?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh, me? Okay, I'm Carsten Rachwal from Germany, as you may hear. I'm a Microsoft MVP for, I think, 12 years now, hoping for my 13th award. We'll see. And I do a lot of storage bases direct and Azure Stack HCI. And this is, I think, the topic of our video series. What are you doing, Bernard?
Well, I work for Microsoft, as you could see here in the subtitle or below my name. My name is Bernard Frank. I'm a customer engineer in the Fast Track team here at Microsoft, helping customers on Azure Stack HCI. That's what I do.
Cool. Cool. So let's see. We have prepared some slides to
Yeah,
tell the people what we will show in the
yeah.
following many videos, right?
Yeah, yeah. So maybe we should talk a little bit about the motivation for this video. What is the purpose of it? What we think is might be useful for you, right? The name it says it's an installation series, so we take it from the bare metal. We try to show you everything, from setting up the hardware until you have a full working cluster. Also, we plan to put on some workload and some hybrid services, maybe like Azure Kubernetes services on top of Azure Stack HCI. And this one is really something that is meant for the admins, for the people that are implementing that stuff as a sort of repository, some sort of best practices, right? Or if you just want to see how are things done, or how if or how things could be done, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
And why do we think we are the right persons for this?
Well, you do. Yeah,
You are in the fast track team for
I'm trying to be
Azure
humble
and
on
Azure
this
Stack
one,
HCI.
right? So I think we have seen quite a few installations. You maybe more than I did because I'm relatively new to the fast track team, but it is one of them. It is one of my main topics that I care of. And I do have customers that I'm following with and that I'm helping with. And this is some sort of best practices, what I've learned, my lessons learned. And I think you also have a lot of lessons learned during your journey with Hyper-V Storage Spaces Direct and Azure Stack HCI.
Yes,
So I think, yeah,
we are the right persons.
we don't know all of it, right? Things change and things are constantly changing, but yeah, what we know we can share.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then let's dive into the introduction.
Yes. So we talked about ourselves, about the motivation. So let's maybe, introduce a little bit the hardware that we are playing with. It's your hardware, right? Maybe, and therefore you are probably the one that can tell a little bit more about it. As we see here, it's a 4-node system, right? So who did you buy this from, or is it something that I mean, people can see it from on the right-hand side of this picture, right? So there's a
Yeah,
label of the window there. So what is it?
yeah. So these are four Asus servers.
Hmm.
I bought them from Thomas Kren,
Hmm.
but I have also hardware from Data On. I had until recently hardware from Dell. I have some hardware from Lenovo.
Hmm.
So this is only an example because it's the newest hardware I have, and it's an 4-node cluster, all NVMEs. We will talk about that a little bit later. And
Hmm.
we also have some GPUs in there. So if we have time next year, maybe we can
Hmm.
do a series about AVD or GPU support in Azure Stack HCI.
Hmm.
So the systems have half a terabyte of RAM,
Hmm.
four 1.6 terabyte no, six
Hmm.
1.6 terabyte NVMEs.
Yeah.
So it's a nice scenario to do demonstrations with. And when I do courses, I have an Azure Stack HCI course, a Storage Bases Direct course. I host, let's say, participant VMs on there where everybody can play with it. So it's not a production environment. It's
Hmm.
here to play with it because I do a lot of Azure Stack HCI and storage bases direct installations with my company, with a colleague of mine. It's our main work we do. Yeah?
Mhm.
So, and it's an AMD system. I always wanted to have an AMD system. So far, I had only Intel hardware, and I can say it's nice and it's the same.
Okay. No, good. So, I mean, you did the assemblation or the design or the setup of that hardware, meaning you have chosen the components to be in that system, right? So the NVMEs, that it is Kioxias or the network adapters that we'll just see in a second. Please note for the audience, I mean, there are systems out there that you can buy from the bigger vendors, which are sort of integrated nodes. That means they are validated. They have support people talking to our support people. They are doing tests. So you would be able to find these integrated systems. The benefit of those, every component that you get there is fully certified, whereas on your system you need to have a little bit of knowledge, or like a big piece of knowledge, not to buy the wrong components, right?
Yeah, but I would say we have two kinds of Microsoft certifications for
Hmm.
Azure Stack HCI. You mentioned the integrated systems. That's
Right.
the best certification where everything is tested together, and the vendors even have a presentation at Microsoft in Redmond, and also the hardware is at Redmond. That's
Hmm.
always the best you can do, but there are only 3 or 4 vendors who have integrated systems, and there are many others who have validated nodes.
Hmm.
They are also certified for Azure Stack HCI, but you have much more possibilities what you can do. These are validated nodes from Thomas Krenn.
Right.
They have validated them and they are supported with Azure Stack HCI. But let's go on
Hmm.
here
Yeah.
because otherwise our first video is already an hour, right? And we
Okay.
want to do short videos.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So let's jump into the network setup, right? Because networking is a critical piece of our setup here, and that you better understand which kind of network settings we have, and how our servers are equipped. Here's a little graph that shows the server from the back, or one node from the back. And basically, we start out with having one base management board, or the controller card, which gives you access to the BMC so that you can remote into the console of that system and do the OS install, right? So
Mhm.
that's 1 gigabit port.
Yeah, before we go on with the network design, there are many possibilities how you can design an Azure Stack HCI network. There is
Mhm.
fully converged, where you do everything of your traffic over 2 cards or 4 cards that are in one set switch. There are other designs, and here we have 7 network ports,
Mhm.
and we try to leverage them as best as we can. So this is not the only design, but this is a design I like very much, and we will now talk about the different points. So the BMC you have already. So
Mhm.
what else is there?
Yeah, let's move to the other 2 ports here on the right, which is also 1 gigabit ports. And there you do have an Intel card for doing that. So that's just for the management traffic that I understood, right? And the nice thing about it is, for redundancy reasons, you are putting these two together, right?
Yeah, the management network is very important in Azure Stack HCI. You have the connection to the domain, for example. The Azure Stack HCI nodes have to contact Azure. So that's always an external communication. And I like to have a separate network for management, for this kind of traffic, if it's possible. So here we have 2 1 gigabit adapters.
Hmm.
And let's imagine you have a problem with a node and you want to get your workload off with a live migration.
Hmm.
So that you can do a live migration, you need a certificate from the Active Directory. So if we only have one management card, and one management card would be connected to one switch, and if
Hmm.
we have a problem there, we can't evacuate. How we call it? We can't move the VMs from the host. So I prefer to have it connected to two switches and do a team for the two cards. So the system only sees one management NIC. Unfortunately, the legacy teaming adapter, the LBFO team, is not supported in Azure Stack HCI anymore. It's still supported in Windows Server, but not in Azure Stack HCI. So we have to do a set switch and use that for giving us the redundancy of a team. So we will do with a 1 gigabit adapter virtual switch, and there we have a virtual adapter called management here, or MGMT. You know?
Okay.
It's not for virtual machines. It's just for the purpose to get redundancy for our management interface. So what else do we have?
Yeah, you mentioned virtual machines, and this is this switch form, right? So we do have a compute switch, also a set switch that is connected to the two ports from the Mellanox Connectix 5 card, which are 25G, right? So an uprise in throughput, as you could imagine, because we may host multiple virtual machines that need forever what they do, right? They need connectivity to the outside world, and that might also include, a high bandwidth connection. Therefore, you dedicated the 25G ports to this, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and then we have two more ports.
Yes, these are these guys here, the bigger ones, and as you can imagine, bigger size in the plug means bigger throughput. So
bigger bandwidth.
yeah,
this is a dual port 100 gigabit adapter. And a fun fact, this is a Mellanox Connectix 5 card, a PCI Express 4 card. I have these cards for 3 to 4 years already, let's say 3 years, but I never had a system that had PCI Express 4. And with PCI Express 3, you have only 8 gigabits per lane. This is a 16 lane card, and if you multiply 16 by 8, you get 128 gigabit. So how could you do 2 times 100 gigabit over a 128 gigabit bus? It's not possible. So I was very excited to get AMD systems with PCI Express 4, but unfortunately I have only one CPU. And so I have the problem with the memory bandwidth. I can't leverage 200 gigabits here. If it would be a two processor system, maybe I could, but not. But this is how we call it. I'm complaining on a very high level here. Yeah.
Oh, poor you.
For me, yes.
Yeah.
So this is a design I really like, but this is not the only design that I mentioned. We also could do the management virtual adapter on the compute switch and not use the two 1 gigabit adapters. But I like, if we have still 1 gigabit there, I like to have it separate, because in the cluster we have some functionality like the heartbeat. I like to have the heartbeat over different switch infrastructures, and we will talk about that when we are in the cluster videos, right? So this is the setup.
Okay. Yeah. As you said, I mean, if you're buying integrated systems, sometimes you don't have the chance to add so many other ports, or you are buying special hardware that is smaller in size, where you don't have the space to get that in. For example, for the retail stores. Sometimes you need to do it differently. But the beauty of this design is, I think, the code lines that we have prepared, you can use them for adjusting it to your environment, right? Okay, so let's jump next. I mean, because we need to, obviously we do have different network cards, different network ports. That was the physical representation of it before in the previous slides. Now we need to do it maybe a little bit more on the logic side of things, right? So we do have different traffic classes. Here I'm trying to sort of giving you, an idea on which IP address range we are using for. Therefore, is this PowerPoint slide. So we do have 4 nodes. Each node, gets an individual IP address suffix, if you will. So the .51, .52 to .54. The management network uses a VLAN. It is on a Class C network with the IP address range at the bottom there, right?
Yeah. So I name my hosts like
Mm-hmm.
the vendor. So this is TOKR,
Right.
TOKR. It's called for Thomas Kren. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
I can't. I'm a little bit older,
You
so I
have so
can't
much hardware, right?
differentiate. Yes, I have a bit hardware,
Oh man.
or we have
Oh.
a bit hardware. So I just called the nodes TOKR HCI 1 to 4, and as you mentioned, I like to have in all the networks that my nodes have the
Mm,
same end octet.
right.
So here the 51 in every network we have the 51 is for the first node. So in management you mentioned already that the 192.168.2.0.9.51 is the first node, and the subnet mask is a little bit incorrect here. It's a 23, not a 24.
Right.
Otherwise, people will say, how could they reach the gateway and so on? But
Right.
it's a
Right.
minor little thing. So then we have our compute network, our compute traffic. You mentioned it.
Mm-hmm.
These are the two 25 gigabit network adapters with the
Mm-hmm.
set switch for the VMs. Yeah? And there we could have different networks. So we use VLAN tagging here to to design it a bit harder. We will see why it's a bit harder if you have especially a VLAN tag on the management network.
Mm-hmm.
So what
Okay.
else do we have?
Yeah, going up, the space is filled with the storage traffic, right? So we are talking of a hyperconverged system here. That means you have the disks in each individual node. In order to get redundancy, the storage will replicate every write, for example, to the other nodes as well for redundancy reasons, and that is happening via a high-speed network, which is the green line here. And as for its importance, we use 2 high-speed networks here, which are separated from each other, at least from the IP address ranging, right?
Yes, I use the same VLAN tag for both
Mm-hmm.
networks, and sometimes network guy says, "Oh, no, if you have a subnet, you need another VLAN."
Mm,
No, you do not. I know many companies do that. Subnet equals VLAN, but you can also have multiple subnets in the same VLAN. And I did that here. If you like to separate subnets as VLANs, you can easily put
yeah.
the 813 here. But it's not. Is it not? It's not like I set it up. Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay, let's go on because time is.
Yeah. So is that it? No, it's not all. So we introduced one node, right? We also gave you some ideas about, the physical layout of one node. However, we need to have some additional hardware, which is our switches that we have here. So first of all, we also do have the switches for the 1 gigabit lanes, right? And then we do have 2 switches for taking the other traffic, right? The high-speed traffic. So yeah, in order, yeah, please bear with me. I don't draw lines now. I don't have it animated because it could be a little bit crowded. So let's do that just for one node, right? And now you can see me sweat or because I'm trying to do that live, right? So let's just get maybe from the importance kind of thing first to connect the storage ones, right? So I will try to connect this adapter here and the other for maybe for redundancy reasons, take that port over here, right? Happy with that, Carsten?
I'm very happy. So
Yeah.
we have our 100 gigabit Mellanox switches, now NVIDIA.
Mm-hmm.
They have 16 100 gig ports. And Bernard will next connect the 25 gigabit adapters. So for that, there is a cable where you, on one end, have a 100 gigabit port, and on the other end, 4 25 gigabit ports. So you can also connect 25, 50, 100, 10 gigabit to the switch. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and now we have the gigabit adapters. They are connected to Ubiquiti switches. I have for the other stuff here Ubiquiti, and some of you would say that is not enterprise grade. I agree, but we are a company with a lot of hardware, but here I don't use Cisco or Aruba or whatever switches. I have Ubiquiti because it's much easier to manage with Wi-Fi, with internet, and so on. So we have the 1 gigabit adapters connected to the Ubiquiti switch, and the BMC is not redundant. It's connected to one switch. Yeah?
Okay.
Normally, we don't use the BMC only if we install the stuff. So this is the layout, and the Mellanox switches are also integrated, so meshed with the Ubiquiti hardware. So I can, the VMs that are connected over the 25 gigabit adapters to the Mellanox
Mhm.
switches, they also, the VLANs are presented also in the Ubiquiti environment. So we have it for everything. Okay,
Okay.
so
Good.
this is a real design as you can find it at a customer. And I like this design very much. We don't have too much network cards. We have good redundancy. Yeah?
Mhm.
But we could also do everything over the Mellanox switches. But that's not my preferred design if I can avoid it.
Okay.
For that, we do maybe a separate webinar to explain that. It takes maybe half an hour or an hour to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, right, right. But as you would say, these switches are interconnected, right?
Yes,
In
yeah.
order to, because we do have multiple nodes talking there, we don't, always plug in the right cards to the right server, or at least we also have crosstalk with the virtual machines. Hence, we need to interconnect these ones. Okay, good. I think that is it from the PowerPoints that we had. So now we are jumping into a series of videos, and I think in the next video we are installing the operating system using a boot stick. So stay tuned. See you in the next video.